People have long been fascinated by mechanically powered transport, and their efforts to travel over land and sea have resulted in some weird and wonderful inventions. But the big problem has always been, how do you power these marvelous machines? Everything from gas to crude attempts at collecting solar energy have been tried. Even rocket fuel has been given a chance, but with dubious results. Despite all these fine attempts at alternative power, the best that's evolved so far seems to be the oil-based fuels, petrol and diesel. But sooner or later, the oil's going to run out. Now, an electric car might be the answer, but a car moves from place to place, so you can't just plug it in. You have to store power in a battery. But a battery powerful enough to compete with a petrol engine just hasn't been invented yet. But early in 1985 came the announcement of a new type of electric vehicle. The man behind the idea was Sir Clive Sinclair, well known for making pocket calculators and home computers cheap enough for everyone. Sir Clive prides himself in tackling problems that, at first glance, might seem impossible to solve.
Electric vehicles have been tried for many, many years, but really there were two things wrong with the approaches that were taken. One was that the vehicles were attempts to make an ordinary car run on electricity, and that simply doesn't work at the moment. The batteries available won't give an ordinary car the performance and range that people have come to expect from ordinary petrol cars.
A problem that others had identified but couldn't see any way around. But Sir Clive came at it from an entirely new direction.
We turned the problem on its head. We took an existing battery, the sort that's used, or similar sort to the sort that's used in an ordinary car, and we said, what can we do with that? We can't put it in a conventional car. It won't make it go fast enough. It won't make it go far enough. But we can build around that by being very clever in the design, a vehicle, not an ordinary car, but a small vehicle, which does meet another need that's not now met.
So he and his team set to work to design a vehicle around that battery.
Because the battery is such a heavy part of what is a very light vehicle, we decided that it would be best to place it towards the middle of the vehicle and low down so that we get maximum stability. For the same reason, when we came to put in the second most important part of the vehicle, that is the driver, we also decided to seat him very low down, and so we designed this, what we call a semi-recumbent seating position. When we do that, it enables us to take the unusual step to put the steering bars underneath the legs of the driver. And I think when you see the C5 with a driver inside, it'll be clear how comfortable it is and easy to control. With the driver low down, of course, we also have very low air resistance because not very much of his body is above the body of the vehicle. Then we have to make it into a vehicle which will run on the roads. For this we needed wheels, we needed a chassis to hold all the different parts of the vehicle together, and we needed to do it with the minimum of weight for the vehicle for the most effective result.
And minimum of weight meant minimum of parts. To the Y-shaped chassis are attached 3 wheels, a small engine with a bicycle drive chain, then the lightweight body, a specially moulded seat, the steering bars, and there you have it. Each and every part is tested to destruction to see how long they'll last on these specially designed test beds. Engineers have to satisfy themselves that parts such as brakes, which will be used thousands of times out on the road, are able to withstand such stress and strain. The design itself is so simple that the actual production process, the putting together of the new vehicle on a long production line, is in fact done at a washing machine factory in Wales. None of the workers here had any trouble adjusting to the putting together of a small vehicle. So simple is the process that they could turn out 10,000 vehicles a week. Having mass-produced it, Sir Clive then faced perhaps the hardest task of all, convincing the public that the C5 was what they wanted.
The C5 is a single-seater electric vehicle, very lightweight body, very lightweight in total. It's got a range of about 20 miles on one battery, or 40 miles on 2 batteries, and a top speed of 15 miles an hour. It meets the needs of people who are doing relatively short journeys. It's obviously not the sort of vehicle you go from London to Scotland in, but is the sort of vehicle you'd go around town in, go to school in, go shopping in, go to station in.
To help get his message across, he organised the first public showing of the C5 to be held in a large London stadium amid a blaze of television lights and publicity. But the big question remained, how would the public and the critics react to this new form of transport? Even before the launch, the press tried to visualise what the new C5 would look like. And when it actually appeared, hardly a week went by without an article appearing in one newspaper or another. Not all of them favourable, though. Holland banned it completely, while other people criticised it on the point of safety. One motoring organisation, the AA, said they weren't entirely happy about seeing it out on the open road.
Well, we have some reservations about the vehicle, primarily connected with its safety. It's a very low vehicle, it's a very small vehicle. It can be masked by other cars, other lorries in traffic, and not seen by riders. The other thing, of course, is that it appeals and can be driven by very young riders. And we know from accident statistics that young riders are those who are most at risk on the road. It's very often not a question of how safe the rider himself is, but how safe those are who are around him. And constantly one's urging drivers to use defensive driving techniques to be in a position to avoid the accident. It's not a powerful vehicle, it's a low-speed vehicle, and I think there must be a question over the ability to avoid certain types of accidents if you're using it. The real skill, of course, and we come back here to the young rider, is having the ability, the knowledge to avoid getting into a potential accident.
You're an experienced driver. I mean, would you take one out?
Personally, I wouldn't dream of using one in London traffic.
One person who has a lot of experience of London traffic is the president of the Cyclist Touring Club, Alan Ling. And it has to be remembered that technically the C5 isn't actually a car. It's an electrically assisted pedal tricycle. So who better to test drive a C5 than an experienced cyclist?
Well, I was very interested to have a ride on the C5. The novelty value is very high, obviously. I did feel very vulnerable because the machine was low down in traffic. You feel that the traffic approaching from behind doesn't have a very good view of you. It takes a little bit of getting used to. There's a lot of road vibration, and I found on a road with camber, where the surface of the road tilts, the machine also tilts, which can be a little bit disconcerting. And when you pull up at traffic lights, you tend to be on a level with the exhaust pipe of the car in front of you, which is not terribly pleasant. The engine is either on or off, so you're either going or you're stopped, which means that you can't escape from an emergency in the same way as you can on a bicycle. The brakes were adequate, but because you are low down, it's not so easy to give effective hand signals. I would certainly feel safer on a bike. I think it's a very imaginative concept, which is being marketed very well. I think it will appeal to children, it will appeal to adults as well. But in terms of a vehicle which will really get you from A to B safely, I would prefer to stick to my bicycle any day, I'm afraid.
Any vehicle has its risks. The roads are very dangerous places, and any child or adult has to be very careful how they use any vehicle. It shouldn't be done without some degree of learning. But having said that, the C5 is a much better bet. It is much more visible, a lot of attention's gone into that, but it's also more stable than any two-wheeler can ever be.
Do you think there should be a course for drivers of C5s?
I think that really there should be instruction on the use of the roads for all people, no matter what vehicle they're going to use, be it a bicycle or a C5 or a moped. I'd certainly advocate that, but the C5 is no different in that respect from those other vehicles.
And research into improved safety went on even after the C5 was on the road. Wing mirrors were introduced to give the driver better all-round vision. The colour of the boot was changed from black to white, and a high-visibility mast was made standard. All this made the C5 easier to see out on the open road. But one of the biggest criticisms of the C5 was that it could be driven anywhere by anyone over 14. But do 14-year-olds actually want to drive it?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was much faster than what I thought it'd be. It went nice and smooth and that.
I wouldn't like it, because especially if it stops in the middle of the road, I wouldn't know what to do, I'd just panic. Well, it's very small. I don't think drivers could see you properly, and you could go under a lorry easily, you know, anything like that. And a lorry could probably knock you flying and wouldn't even realise.
Would you rather have a C5 or a bike?
I'd rather have a bike because, well, I think you'd look a right wally going around on a C5, quite frankly.
Science museums, especially motor museums such as this one in Coventry, are full of examples of ideas that originally were laughed at, or worse still, completely dismissed as crackpot inventions. It seems that every new idea has its critics, and the C5 has had its fair share. But already, this museum has asked for a permanent display of a C5. They regard it as an example of an original idea. But there's more than one way of tackling the problem of electric-powered vehicles, and Sinclair isn't the only one coming up with solutions. Others have also designed their own versions, not as sleek as the C5 perhaps, but they're all based on the same principle: three-wheel, battery-powered bikes. Although this one might look like an ordinary tricycle, when you open the boot, there are the batteries. This is a recumbent tricycle like the C5, except that it's got two wheels at the front, with the motor driving the back wheel directly. But so far, Sir Clive has been the only one to take on the expensive gamble of putting his prototype into mass production.
So there we are. You've heard all the pros and cons, the arguments for, and the criticisms of the C5 by the experts. But in the end, it'll be up to the general public to decide whether or not they buy it. And that all depends, obviously, on how practical it operates out there on the open road. So with that in view, I'm going to take it for a short run in some real traffic.
It's too small, really, to be seen.
Too dangerous, I think.
It is too small to look very good. Sort of like, looks like a little pedal car.
I wouldn't ride it on roads. It's not as safe as a bike. Like, you can't see the steering, what you're doing with it. Whereas on a bike, you can see it.
Well, if you had to start, you wouldn't be able to pedal it away fast enough because it is quite hard to pedal.
I wouldn't personally drive it on the road.
For what it is, I don't really think it's worth the money.
People generally, I think, don't like change. All of us really, without realising it sometimes, resist change in some way. We don't like to change schools, we don't like to change houses. Change is a bit disturbing. And it's a natural thing to resist it. So anything that changes our lives, we tend to question very critically. And so it's right that people should challenge any new ideas, and that they should be tested in that way. Of course, some people are more susceptible to new ideas than others.
So if someone does come up with a new idea and it appears that they're being knocked, as it were, they shouldn't give up straight away?
Not a bit, no. It's as I say, it is quite natural, and it is really for new ideas to find their place, rather than for us to necessarily adjust to the new ideas. If the new ideas are not right, then they are naturally rejected.
We made that film in March 1985 when we asked the question, could the C5 succeed? In fact, it ceased production in July that very same year, and now it's highly unlikely that the C5 will ever be produced in Britain again. But that's not the end of the story. The C5 could be produced abroad, and Sir Clive Sinclair, amongst many others, is still trying to work on a more advanced electric vehicle. In a world of dwindling oil supplies and increasing pollution, they're proving to be a highly attractive alternative. And one thing is certain, somebody is going to resolve the problems of electric traction and come up with the solution.